Welcome, everybody. And give it a second here while everybody jumps in. While everybody's jumping in, let's kick it off with my favorite. Where is everybody from? Drop it in the chat. Let's see where we're getting everybody from into this year. Paul, we got one San Francisco. And come on, gentlemen, in the chat. What do we got? Milwaukee, Alexandria, Virginia, Dallas, and Collingwood, Canada. As a Canadian, I feel
Nice.
like I should know where that is. Where's Collingwood? I'm.
Ontario?
Is it Ontario? Maybe.
Hey, it's just north of Toronto. I'm Scott.
Yep.
Okay, okay, just north of Toronto. Okay,
Yep.
all right. Thank you. Um, I failed my Canadian geography today. I'm on the West Coast, so it's a long
Yeah.
ways away. Good, good. What do we got? Norfolk, West Palm, Santa Fe. Mark, I'm in Santa Fe at the moment as well. Good. Fantastic. All right. Well, people will be hopping on, and for those of you who are watching the recording later, welcome to the recording. Um, because we do always record these also. And this is actually a kind of a special live session for me, because it's something that, when I started working with MEA over 2 years ago, it was kind of a need that I saw, or sort of a void, and that was something specifically for men. And MEA as a company, in the space we've been in, we're about 65 to 70% of our attendees have always been female, and women are far better at this, I think, than men. And so this is an exciting one because it's, I think, the start of a journey for MEA. And I'll kind of start with my own confession. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my entire adult life, since I was 18. I was always the guy building something, always chasing the next win, whether it's in business or on my mountain bikes or in life in general, sort of that type A. And kind of by every external metric, I'd made it. I built companies, I've sold companies, sold my first company before I'd hit 30 and checked kind of all the success, checked all the boxes for the successful man scorecard, if you will. But what nobody ever told me about that path is you can win the game, but it can still feel like you're losing. And for all intents and purposes, I was successful from the outside looking in, but what I was missing were things that nobody ever told me were kind of the real keys to happiness. And that was, real friendships, not the transactional friends that so many of us have from work, but, real friends, a sense of purpose beyond sort of the next deal, the ability to truly be present with my kids, with the people I love, with my brain, without my brain running, a P&L in the background. And so, this is why this conversation is so important to me, not just personally, but as a guy. Because let's be honest, a lot of guys are pretty terrible at these conversations. It's just how we're wired. It's how we've been raised. Um, we don't sit down with our buddies often and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with purpose," or, I don't know who I am outside of my career and the hat that I wear there. And it's just not how we're wired, and we were taught to figure it out, to push through, and keep that scoreboard moving. But it's interesting over the last couple of years with my involvement in MEA, even though our workshops historically haven't been specifically designed for men, and we have a lot of fantastic workshops that are co-ed, it's been super enlightening, fascinating to watch what happens when you take guys out of this environment that we've been raised in and give them the space to kind of drop that armor. And I see it, I know Ben and Greg have both been to MEA. Ben's been a facilitator here. Greg is going to be a facilitator here. We see this, right? Guys walk in, they show up, arms crossed, doing the whole I'm fine. But then over the course of 3, 4, 5 days, opening up and it's interesting when you see one guy start to open up and share and give that permission, that other guys start to follow, and you see the work that gets done. And that's why I'm excited about where we are today this live session, the workshop we have coming up that is specifically for men at MEA. Women are just naturally better at this, but men need it just as much. And so, I have the privilege now of talking to guys every single day. Guys, yeah, I see it, I mean, just professionals, entrepreneurs, lawyers, doctors, businessmen. Yeah, they have it all. They look like they have it all figured out, but are quietly struggling with all the same things that we all are. And look, that's my kind of my story. And the reason I'm sharing this because, I wanted to put something together and we were looking for, okay, who's doing the work in this space? And not just I mean, I've joked with Ben, on on one extreme, you have the guys, going on these ayahuasca journeys in drum circles. And then on the other side of it, we're gonna be Navy SEALs and we're gonna break you down and make you the alpha male. And I'm like, no, no, where do we find the middle here? Not just the surface level crush it bro content, but actually helping men navigate this midlife chapter with honesty, with depths. And there's two names that came to mind for me, and I'm super excited to introduce them. And I'm going to start with the first. He's the founder of the Midlife Male movement and the author of the book, The Midlife Male, which is a guide for us, for guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, that none of us were handed. He's an entrepreneur. He's built and exited companies as well, including one that was acquired by Michael Eisner, another one that went to the NASDAQ. So he knows achievement. He's run that treadmill, but at 47, at the same age his father passed away, he hit a wall, right? And that was a journey. As he kind of white knuckled through that. Now he's in 52. He's in the best shape of his life. Two-time decathlon winner, High Rocks national competitor, and just the kind of guy who makes you tired reading his schedule some days, right? Like just go, go, go. But he's doing amazing things in the midlife male space. And so, first of all, happy to introduce Greg Scheinman. Greg, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. I gained a year. I'm 53 now.
Are
So
you? Okay. All right.
yes.
All
So
right.
I'm regaining that number always goes up. There you go.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. That's a guaranteed one. Fantastic. All right. Well, our second guest is someone who comes at this from I looked at it and went these different angles, and that's why I wanted him in this conversation. He's the author of a book called The Way Home: Discovering the Hero's Journey to Wholeness at Midlife, and Krista Tippett called that a powerfully wise offering to men of his generation. And he comes at this from the perspective he spent years as an ordained minister and pastor. He led work with religious and spiritual leaders at the On Being Project. He teaches meditation in prisons and volunteers as a hospice chaplain. And so this is a guy who spent his career walking alongside people through the hardest moments of their lives. And then, I think he kind of woke up and he's been so busy helping everyone else find their way, he kind of lost his. We're incredibly lucky to have him here as well. So without further ado, I want to welcome Ben Katt. Ben, welcome.
Thanks so much. Good to be here with you, Derek and Greg.
So I figured I'm just gonna I'm gonna lead this and I'm gonna bounce questions at you guys. Um, we have, just under an hour, and if we have time at the end, we'll open it up for some questions. And so here's what I love having you both here. You know, Greg, you've built kind of this external operating system for midlife, right? You've got the rules, the habits, the standards, the accountability. Um, Ben, you've mapped this inner journey, the spiritual transformation, the letting go, finding your way home to yourself, as your book puts it. And I think men need both. So let's dive in. And I'm going to start with Greg. Greg, you've had two successful business exits. You were doing everything right on paper. Then at 47, something shifted. What was the moment? What was your moment that you realized this playbook that we've all been, I think we all shared that playbook. When did you realize it wasn't actually working for you?
I think there were a series of moments that
Hmm.
led to one tipping point, if you will. But to your point, we tend to lead with what went well. You lead with the successes or the exits.
Hmm.
And the truth is, while that was going on, there were losses and failures and mistakes and missteps that were also adding up. And I got to a place where, like you mentioned, I was 47 years old. I was a partner in a large firm at that time. I was the same age as when my father passed away. I was married with a wonderful wife and two beautiful kids. And again, everything looked wonderful. You hit it. Yeah, you hit it in the intro,
Mm.
there. But I didn't feel great. I wasn't pleased with the man in the mirror.
Hmm.
And at that point, I decided that I could either pour some rocket fuel on the next phase of my life, or I could squander these opportunities that I had. And I always thought that 47 was bonus time for me. Again, at that point, I was now alive, for a breath in a day longer than my father had made it. And that was
Mm.
really the tipping point moment. And I think guys find them at different ages and different stages in different places. Mine just hit me in the parking lot of my office building, 47th birthday, 10-year anniversary with the firm, the suit on, the reserved parking spot, looking at the building, and just not wanting to get out of the car and go inside. And I didn't that day. I turned around, I drove away, and I took out a pad and a paper and had a pen, and I started writing down what I wanted the next phase of my life to look like. And that was the beginning.
Mm. So, Ben, over to you. I mean, I've heard you talk about the three-headed monster: achievement, perfection, approval of others, right? You know, I mean, you were a former pastor. You were in the business of helping other people find meaning, right?
Yeah, yes.
When did you realize you'd lost yourself?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I love Greg. Thanks for sharing that story. That was your call to adventure, as Joseph Campbell would put it, and I explore that in my book. And my call to adventure, 34. So one of the call we get many calls in our life, but at 34, and I had been a pastor for about 10 years and started a community center in Seattle where we were serving people dealing with addiction, mental illness, homelessness, like a lot of trauma. And so it was meaningful, impactful work. But on this one morning, I'm running around this lake in Seattle called Green Lake. Typically, I'd charge up a hill, turn the corner, like crush the last 10 blocks to my house and go make a difference. But this one day I got to the top of the hill and it's like this voice whispered inside me. It just said, if you don't have your heart, you have nothing. If you don't have your heart, you have nothing. And I knew right then, I mean, it was, hey, I'm burned out. But in the days, weeks that followed, I as I peeled back the layers, I did see this three-headed monster: achievement, perfection, performing to please other people. And because of my line of work, in nonprofit space, and sometimes I do share I have three exits myself, but they're all nonprofits. So, you get the idea of what that means. But I was in this other space, but I was playing the same game that so many men especially play. It's kind of like this onward and upward. And I'm trying to, we start to wrap our identity up that I am what I do, I am what I achieve. And because of the work, so yes, I was making a difference, I was helping people. But I think because of the nature of the work that had sort of this virtuous vibe to it, right? Sort of respected by others. I fooled myself into thinking I wasn't playing that same game, and I wasn't able to see it until, and that wasn't my first burnout experience, but it was the one that really woke me up. So that's a bit of my, you know, the beginning of my, what I would say, entering the second half of life, and deciding there's got to be another way. I cannot keep living with that same operating system. I got to find another way.
Hmm. It's interesting. I listened to both of you and then my story. I mean, the treadmill and just hitting my early 40s and going, this is just empty. Like I've lost any desire to continue to move forward. So different stories, but is it the same thing underneath? And that's a question I throw to both of you. Is there a common thread why men in midlife are hitting this wall, regardless of what it looks like from the outside?
Yeah, first, guys, can you hear me a little bit better? I saw some notes in the chat. Is that a little bit better? Okay. Just want to make sure. It, the first thing I'll say is, like, we can even define midlife. I know a lot of really
Mm.
old 30 somethings, and I know a lot of
Yep.
spectacularly young 60 and 70 somethings. So I do
Yeah.
think that men hit these situations and circumstances in their lives at different times that are there. And I will say, from having now interviewed over 250 of the highest performing middle-aged men in the world from a wide spectrum of professions, achievements, levels, all of that, there are similarities in everyone's stories, regardless of how they were raised or where they're from or what their vocation was, or exits or no exits, or whatever it might be. There are common threads and similarities. And I think a lot of it comes down to what Ben mentioned there. They lack an operating system. They've lacked a way of doing things that feels authentic for themselves. I've had people say to me before, oh, you've reinvented yourself multiple times. And I say, I don't think about it as reinvention as much as I think about it as release.
Mm.
I think I was running other people's playbooks and operating systems for years, following
Mhm.
certain paths and stereotypes and the ways you're supposed to do things as a man who is growing up, from school to job to marriage to family to accumulation to wealth, to how you do all of these things. And then you get to a place where it just doesn't work for you anymore like that. And you have to really look within and think about what does work for you. What does that look like? And that's also a very tough place to start when you haven't asked yourself those questions for the majority, if not all, of your life. And that's where we really get started in a lot of the work that I do with guys. And it's where this even notion of mastering the middle comes from,
Mhm.
because you can't do nothing, what we've learned, and you can't do everything. So
Mm.
where in between, and all that white space in between, is what works for you and how you want to operate in your life.
Mm. Love that. Ben, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. Where my mind went was, so Carl Jung, famous, psychotherapist, psychologist, he talked about this idea of, he says it was almost inevitable that men somewhere around 40-ish. So again, it's like 30 to 50 to 60. I mean, I think it's really even changed because
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons we don't need to get into. But like this is a natural part of human development, especially male development, where we spend the first half of our life building a container, a way of almost in our ego structure, a way of moving through the world. And then, yeah, that we're running on these scripts, much of them influenced from the outside in, and we get to a point where it's not working for us anymore. And I think part of why that happens is, um, in my book, I explore Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and he's got three phases: departure, initiation, return. Part of where that came from for him was building on the work of someone else, Arnold van Gennep, who studied rites of passage. Rites of passage in indigenous cultures, throughout history, and rites of passage were critical, especially for men. It's
Hmm.
when you entered adulthood to become a full member of the community.
Yeah.
So women have a natural biological process where they are entering adulthood, but men would have to have they'd be sent out into the bush, right? They would, there'd be separation, go out into the wilderness. They'd undergo some trials and challenges. That would be the initiation, this time of transformation, and then they would return back with a greater sense of who they are and what their contribution is in their community and in the world. We've lost those structures. So I think that's
Mm.
why we're later in life where we're kind of waking up. We haven't had those formative experiences. I mean, some people have. Maybe for some it's you go into the military. There's a version of a rite of passage, but largely we've lost that. Just go to
Hmm.
college, go work, maybe get married, and you're kind of on this treadmill. So that's what came up for me, in the sense of I do think there's something just fundamentally essential about this process, and that's why it's not something to be resisted or feel shame around. Like, because I find this with people I work with sometimes, like, oh shit, like is it too late? Like almost feeling a little shame, like I should have figured this out earlier. It's like, you know what? Whenever you figure it out, you figure it out. Whenever that call to adventure comes, it just matters that you pay attention and you
Mm,
open up to the fact that maybe you're no longer the expert. You got to become an apprentice again to your own life.
mm, hmm. So, Greg, you've coached hundreds of men. You've had what, over 200 podcast episodes now?
Yeah, well over 200 podcast episodes and the interviews in the newsletter every week and men that I've
Yeah.
coached that we've backed into this. Yes.
So based on that, I mean, what do you think men are the most afraid to say out loud? What are they carrying they won't talk about at the barbecue or office, or, what is it?
I think it's what we don't know. I think we're
Mm,
uncomfortable with what we don't know.
hmm
And one of the things I'm so excited about for both the workshop and even being on this call with all of you out here is that there are different perspectives. And immediately there's a guard that's let down in a safe space of being open to listen and share different perspectives. It's obvious Ben is well read and quoting Campbell and Carl Jung and all, and I get kind of a joy and a chuckle out of it because I ask my landscaper, I ask my barber, my trainer, Troy Aikman, Laird Hamilton. I ask these guys for their opinions and insights and advice out
hmm
there. And I think what a lot of guys are scared of is they're scared of asking questions, of being curious, of
hmm
being interested instead of fixating on I have to be interesting or I have to be strong or I have to be the one that has the answer. And so many of us are in these places of where we're empowered or have been empowered, whether we're entrepreneurs or executives or CEOs or wherever we are in the quote unquote pecking order of it. We're either trying to move up and therefore we have to be right and know and strong and do this
hmm
and proud and we peacock a lot, or we're at that level that we always wanted to get to and it's very lonely at the top and everybody now expects us to have all the answers and be strong and be out there, so we don't open it up and let it trickle out and trickle down in that regard. And
mm
again, I'll just come back to the theme of this. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle,
hmm
where men can get comfortable in where their strength is, where their
mm
superpowers are, but also where their vulnerabilities are and where their questions are, and the value of putting all that together in how much I know is just as important and valuable as how much I don't know. And I'm willing to let you see both sides of that.
mm hmm So Ben, you write about I've read how men have been bombarded with messages from society telling them who they should be. What do you think? What do you think the biggest lie midlife men have been sold?
Oh my, the biggest one. I mean, I definitely think I mean, I can't answer this without being informed by my own experience. So, you know, my father told me a lot. So I have three brothers, by the way, no sisters. My father told me, and I love my dad. I'm gonna see him tonight. But told me a lot, like, I love you, I love you. And a lot of men don't hear that. My dad said
hmm
that all the time. My dad also said, I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you. And guess what? A lot of people don't hear that from their fathers. They long to hear that. And so I'm going to take responsibility for this. I'm not putting this on my dad, but it's something I had to work through. Over time, I internalized that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for, like, I'm loved for what I do. And I think part of why I internalize that way is because there's messaging in society. It's like, you got to talk about your list of accomplishments and all these things you've done.
hmm
And so there's definitely this one of the big things. It's like, I am what I do, I am what I achieve. Um, and then the other side of that, though, is like, what to do things, to achieve things, you have to, there's a certain strength that's expected, right? Like, and like
hmm
almost even, and then you could also talk about like this almost rugged individualism. Like, I got to do it on my own and kind of prove I started this thing in my garage or whatever. And the reality is, so what that does is it keeps us from being vulnerable. So I would say that's like the flip side of it is we're afraid to show up authentically. And as Greg's saying, yeah, a big part of being vulnerable is just to acknowledge, I don't know, to say, I'm not the expert, to say,
Hmm.
I don't have it all figured out. To be vulnerable doesn't mean immediately we're getting super emotional and going there. Now we can get there because we all are carrying grief, shame, pain. We're carrying these different things, but vulnerability doesn't have to start there. And
Mm.
so we end up being really, really closed off. And I'll just say, sort of, to tag this on, I was just leading a workshop earlier this week with a group of 11 women, and
Hmm.
they were all like, "Can we get our husbands to do this kind of thing?" And I'm like, I'm kind of like, honey, that ain't gonna work. Like, it's just it like that's not gonna work. And sometimes they're gonna have to figure it
Yeah.
out on their
Yeah.
own. But this is also why, why I respect Greg's work so much and why what we're doing here is so important. It's like, as men, we need to be exemplars in terms of
Hmm.
what it looks like to not define ourselves just by these external things, to be present, to be vulnerable, because that gives permission to other men to do that as well.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about loneliness for a minute. Data says right now men over 40 have fewer closer friendships than any time in modern history. And this is a question to both of you. Why is it so hard right now for men to build close relationships and friendships in this chapter? And what do you think this is costing us?
Ben, do you want to go first? I felt like I've gone first. I wanted to.
Sure, I'll go
Either
first.
way. I
I'll go
love this
first.
top. I love this topic. I
Yeah,
really do. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh.
Oh man, I mean, what instantly came to my mind, you mentioned how I've spent time in hospice. I just thought about the five regrets of the dying, and I don't need to list them all, but one of them is, these are people. There's a woman who spent 25 years with the dying and identified these five themes. And one was, I wish I'd lived a life more true to myself, not the life that others expected. That's what we're talking about. But then
Hmm.
two of the other ones that I think are related to the friendship thing is, um, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Okay, that's what people say. So I think our work ethic, and again, being drivers and strivers, it's that affects our friendships. But then there's another one that's actually, I wish I'd kept in touch with my friends. Now,
Mm.
this was research basically from probably a decade or two ago. I mean, I think now it might be like, I wish I had more friends, to what you're saying, Derek. So, um,
Hmm.
you know, I think it is busyness. I think it is being afraid of being vulnerable. Um, but I don't, as I say, busyness, part of it's like a lot of men, and I'm one of them. It's like our roles in our families, they're different than my father's generation. Like, I am very much fully involved in my kids' lives, and I'm grateful for that. I have a lot of domestic responsibility. My wife and I both work, and we're both on the home front. So our lives are very full. And so it's very easy to kind of like just be so focused on work
Mm.
and family that we don't make space for other things. And then you add to it the fact that some of our social institutions, religious institutions, clubs, other things, they don't really exist anymore. That
Yeah.
used to be ways that men would come together.
Yeah, and I think we fool ourselves too into thinking that, oh, now I've got a great network of friends. It's all the people I work with every day,
Mhm.
which isn't necessarily the case, which I've learned. You exit a company, and with that exits a lot of the relationships, right? Over to you, Greg.
Yeah, I think both of you touched on some really, really important points here. And I was just jotting even a couple of things down, which is what I do when I hear really good thoughts and ideas. Again, someone was talking about curiosity and go, okay, that interests me now. And I want to dive in on that. One, I think we attract and repel exactly what we deserve. And because of that, it affects our relationships and friendships. And I'll just give you an example. When I was over indexed in business, you
Hmm.
know, waking up before the sunrise, not getting to bed before midnight. It was chasing dollars, chasing success, being with clients, going out too late, drinking too much. I was attracting, that's who I was around. And when I
Hmm.
started to, and because of that, I don't think the relationships, you inherit clients, you inherit colleagues, you're around them. You're entertaining, you're impressing, you're playing a bit of a character and a role. And then this happens in the family side of things too. As a father, you I remember I inherited guys through Little League and baseball. You inherit guys through the schools that your kids are in. And these
Hmm.
are not your people. You're just around these people. They're not
Hmm.
really your friends. They're either seasonal or they're even single serve friends, which I've talked about. Oh, that's the guy from Little League all the time. And I don't see him any other time outside of Little League. And I think we feel like our circles need to be bigger when in fact our circles need to be smaller. And we often don't allow ourselves to outgrow friendships and relationships by virtue of the way that we're changing. As my
Mm.
life started to change, that 3 year period where I wrote my book from 47 to 50, where I started to change my behaviors, the actions I took, the choices I made, what I put on my body, in my body, where I went, well, I met a lot of new people. And they were very like-minded people. Not the buzzword like-minded, but really I was there and you were there too, which means we both really want to be here around this. So we clicked and we connected more. And there were a lot of relationships along the way that started to fall off because that alignment and like-mindedness was no longer there. Whether we went to high school together, college together, we had been in the same firm for 10 years or so. And some of my greatest and closest friendships right now, the home field advantage is gone. Geography, they're far away, but we speak more
Mm.
frequently and we meet at different events and experiences together and we show up better. So I tend to look at this loneliness epidemic, if you will, for men in a very how do we solve it and how do we resolve it? And I
Hmm.
think it comes back to, again, the choices you make, the actions you take. And when you make the better choice the majority of the time, the majority of your life gets better. And that is spot on with the people that we surround ourselves with. So I love
Mhm.
this one. And
Mm.
that's
Mm.
why I
I,
get
I
excited for
I
workshops and to
I
be
love it.
around people like this,
Yeah.
because that's to me where the
Yeah.
energy, that's where the fun is, that's where the
Hmm.
enlightenment is. And you know it when it feels right, and you know it when it doesn't. We just don't
Mhm.
Mm.
often listen to that very simple voice in our head that tells us which one is better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Greg, I'm thinking it's like you had to listen to, sit in your car and be like, kind of, what am I doing here in your suit? Like, and actually write, what do I want to live? And that's your answering the call to adventure. And that's the thing. It's like when we start to say yes to just that inner knowing, that thing we're feeling drawn to, that we want a fuller life, we want a more authentic expression of who we are, like you said, even I got to bring up Campbell again, but he talks about like help arrives. I mean, when Frodo sets out from the Shire to do this thing he's got to do, Samwise Gamgee runs into him. Oh, and then there's Aragorn. Like you end up, this is how it is even in our own lives. You commit to
Yeah.
your path and you will find, I mean, you're leaving some things behind and that can make people nervous, but you absolutely will attract those people that, resonate with you. I
You
love it.
will. And I'll just tag on to that. You will leave some people behind, but the opportunity that exists ahead is far greater. And getting out of that
Mm.
comfort zone of what you've always known and who you've always been around, what I also say is everything you want in life exists. It's out there. You just have to be willing to go out and find it.
Mm.
There are people in the gym at 5 a.m. There's another group of people in the gym at 5 p.m. Depending upon which one works well for you, you can just go. There are
Hmm.
people that want to read books. There are people that want to go on hikes. There are people, everything exists. And when you put yourself out there, whatever it is you want and whoever you are, you have people. There is a tribe for you. There is a community. There are friendships to be developed. The hard part for men, really, the sticking point is getting out of our own way and taking that first step
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
trying to be everything to everyone at the expense of ourself. And there was a
Mm.
real valley of despair for me for a while in that transition of going from what I knew and who I was around and everything from the way I dressed to the way I drank to the way I spoke to everything down here to trying to get into that valley of despair where you feel like you're in no man's land because now you're the new guy and the new things and you're just showing up and finding your way. But you do come out of that. It is a
Hmm.
it is that hockey stick curve. And when you start coming out of it, it is energizing, it is empowering, it is explosive, and it feels right. And
Hmm.
that's when you know you're really onto something.
Mm. So you guys kind of have two different paths forward, if I was going to frame it that way. And Greg, let's start with you. Why don't you walk us through your five rules at a high level?
Yep.
Because I mean, I
So,
think guys listening are thinking, I've tried setting goals before, it doesn't stick. What makes this different from,
mhm.
the next thing?
Yeah. And look, it's hard when you describe certain things. I try to even avoid words like framework
Mm,
and goals and even rules in there. What they are, they're a guide. I do have a concept and it's in the rules, and I'll go through the rules and I'll but I'm going to start with this one. It's actually rule number three. Aggregate, curate, and eliminate. The key here is there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of frameworks. There's a lot of news and books. You can take it all in and aggregate it, but you've got to really curate it down again to what works for you. And then the key to your success is going to be what you eliminate, eliminating the things that don't work. And if you can
mm,
follow that principle, aggregate, curate, eliminate, you really are going to be on your way to a successful life. But to your
mm,
question directly, Derek, the rules which have come not from me, but come from the interviews, have come from the listening, have come from the being around the types of men that inspire me and that I've been fortunate enough to have access to, and even guys that I coach. Rule number one, knowing what's important is what's most important. That's
mhm,
where we start. I have guys that come to me and they tell me their family is the most important thing. And I ask them to show me or prove it. And they can't
hmm,
out there. Rule number two, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. We have to have some destination in mind where we are going. Now, we can start by saying we're going west, and that could be good enough. But as we get further and further west, we're going to start narrowing this down. Are we going to California? Within
mhm,
California, is it San Francisco? Is it Los Angeles? You got to know where you're going. The third one, like I said, is aggregate, curate, and eliminate because we've got to get really good at that, or we're going to be
mhm,
overwhelmed by how much noise and volume there is out there. The fourth one is show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. It is as simple as that. You can tell me all the whys, why you want to be a better husband, be a better father, be in better
mhm,
shape, do all this. But if you can't quantify it and measure it, it's not that important to you. Are your workouts scheduled? Are your date nights scheduled? Are you showing, if you show me your calendar and it is 12 hours a day at work and you've missed every one of your kids' recitals, performances, you can tell me all day long your family is the most important thing, but they're not going to feel it and you know it too. And then the fifth
mm,
one in this, because this sounds like it can be a lot and can be hard, or we can call them rules, the fifth one is really the most important: grace, gratitude, and latitude. We put so much pressure on ourselves as men out there
mhm,
that we forget to give ourselves grace, show ourselves gratitude, and provide ourselves with some latitude for when we make mistakes and missteps and along the way, and we all do it. So this is not about perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good. This is about having a set of standards that you can turn
mm,
to and you can follow. And if you do, again, each day, these little micro better choices and decisions that you make start to stack up to ultimately a holistically full, what I call total life wellness.
mm, mhm. Love that. So, okay, so pivoting to Ben, I mean, you talk about the hero's journey, which is it's one of the oldest story
Hmm.
structures in human
Hmm.
history. Why does that framework resonate so deeply for men,
Yeah.
midlife specifically?
Yes. Well, I'm just smiling over here because I would like love to design a Venn diagram of like all the overlap between Greg and I, even though they're
Yeah,
like
totally.
different language. Because
Yeah.
so one of the things I say about, and I'll get to the hero's journey in a second, but I always say to people, and by the way, Greg, I love alliteration and I love rhyming, and you do both really well. So for me, early on in my journey, um, when I was like coming out, like trying to find myself, I came across in this kind of crazy mystical way this old Jaguar automobile advertisement, like Mad Men era. And it was 3 words, and these words like pierced my soul. I was like, these are for me. And they were grace. All right, Greg, we got that. Grace, space, pace. So you could say the space has to do with calendar. It's like, do you have space in your life?
Mm,
Are you opening up, so or are you overcrowding your calendar? So anyways, he spoke to that already. But grace, yeah, show yourself grace. And pace is, with all of this, with this transformation, it does take time. It absolutely
mhm,
takes time, and it doesn't happen overnight. And it's not all linear, and it's not onward and upward. And that's really where that hero's journey framework is so powerful. As I talk about it, and this is because I lived it. I didn't read Campbell deeply until after I'd gone through this 5 year, inner transformation. And I was reading it. I was like, this is what I lived. So how I talk about it is, you leave the familiar. That's where it's, answer that call to adventure, and you step away from those operating patterns that no longer serve you. But what happens then, you don't have that map anymore. It was nice. You knew when to show up for work and what to wear and how to be, but so you end up you fall into the unknown. So it is, I can't remember the term Greg used, but this is the underworld. This is the dark night of the soul. This is the disorienting place. Okay. But this is where the magic happens. This is where you start to discover who you really are, and you get clarity about what's next. And then the third phase is rising to wholeness. You're coming back into your community more whole, more authentic. There's a gift you give. There are decisions that you need to make decisions about relationships. There's some other things you need to start, some things you need to stop. um, and you come back with this greater sense of stillness, which doesn't mean not doing anything, but just means you're more present because you're connected to yourself. So how you show up, Derek, like you were talking earlier, you're not like
mhm,
distracted by everything else. You're really dialed in. That's
mhm.
where your curiosity comes forward, right? That's where compassion is shown. So I think that framework, what's so helpful about it, and when I looked back and I said I lived this, is and Father Richard Rohr, right? He teaches at MEA. He's got a book called Falling Upwards. You want to grow, you want to change, you want to ascend. There is a fall, like and it feels like you don't know where the bottom of it is. But this is part of, you could say, your rebirth and claiming the one life that's yours to live. Anyways, there's lots more we could get into there, but a lot of fun overlap here and some different ways of approaching things.
Yeah, the overlap is immense. Two different approaches getting to the same place, in so many ways. Um, so Greg, you talk about the 6 F's. And so I think that's family. What do we got? Family, fitness, finance, food,
Fashion and fun. Yeah.
fashion, and fun. Okay. Okay.
Alliteration, baby.
Alliteration.
And yeah,
Yes, Greg's winning on alliteration, but you also had the best Lord of the Rings reference, Ben. So I
Yes,
think
thank you.
you know.
Thank you. I got more. I've got more. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good
Yeah.
match here.
can
I
we get
love
a
that.
bell now? We just ding for each one of us
Yes.
each time we do this. But some of this comes from, again, I'm a simpleton. And I think it was at my first visit to MEA, the workshop that Tim Parr was at also,
Mhm,
who makes these caddis glasses that I'm now addicted
mhm,
to, and all of their shades and shapes that are there. And he had said something that stuck with me the whole time, that he was like a golden retriever. You throw the ball and he just brings it back. And that was kind of how he has always operated, even in business. And it landed with me because I'm a simpleton like that too. And where some of the iterations have come from, or breaking things down into these, simple, digestible, throw the ball, I bring it back bites, because that's how I'm able to function, well, and get from one space to another. I think Rad put it in the comments, to try to remove complication and not to
mhm,
create complication where there's no reason for complication, because that's where things get messy and the middle is messy enough. So with all this, the differences between Ben's approach, Derek's approach, all 50 something guys on this call's approach, my F's don't have to be your F's.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to know what ours are in there. So for me, when I was redesigning what success looked like for me, that was the circle, the pie chart. If the circle and the pie is everything, what are the pieces in there? And it was family for me, and that's really includes my friends and relationships. It was fitness, which really includes health and sustainability and longevity. It was finance around, you know, how much like what does money really mean? My relationship with money, my career, to have enough to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, and ultimately for as long as I want. With food, it's really nutrition and sustenance and what you're
Mm-hmm.
putting into your body for energy that's there. And for fashion, which comes up a lot, I was wearing the wrong clothes to the wrong places. And it really was more about confidence and feeling like myself and what I put on my body. And fun, which is largely missing for middle-aged men, and it was for me for a very long time, including having the wrong kinds of fun that was expected of men. Fun was something that made the list because it sounded fun. It sounded juvenile. It sounded youthful. It
Yeah.
sounded energetic. And I had a lot of marketing people trying to talk me out of it, saying, oh, no, you can't do that, on there. That's not, midlife, or that's not mature, or that's not executive. And go, as a matter of fact, that should probably be at number one,
One,
because
yeah,
my other
totally.
saying is, hey, if it's not fun, then I'm done. Like, why are we
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
this?
yeah.
People ask me now what I do for fun all the time. And I say, this is what I do for fun. I'm able to get on a call with 50 potential new friends. We're able to go to
Mm,
great places. When we talk about planning the workshop, well, we could talk about sitting in a circle and doing deep work. But we can also talk about what are we going to do the other hours, and the
yeah.
other time. Are we going to surf? Are we going to walk? Are we going to eat? Where are we going to
Mm,
laugh? Where are we going to get to, like the juicy stuff that also allows us to do the deeper work
mm-hmm.
that we want to do and we need to do as well. So write your own F's. They don't all have to be F's. They don't all have to rhyme. They don't have to be anything in there. They
Mm-hmm.
just have to be yours.
I
Mm.
love your F's. I'm taking your F's. They're great. Uh,
They're
but
yours.
the other thing is the fun piece. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I couldn't help but thinking when we started this call, Connor, who's our host, he was playing Queen, by the way, and I was like, oh, I sang that song karaoke. I'm a huge karaoke fan, but fun, I just say like I don't all this, even this inner work, I always say to anyone I work with, it's like, don't take yourself too seriously. I don't take myself that seriously. Like,
Mm,
embrace fun, be childlike, be playful, open up to wonder, to awe. I mean, this is the path.
mm,
Like part of the issue is like, we get caught up thinking I need to grow up. And I used to put on my dad's suits when I was a kid for dress up, and you kind of think you grow up and you got to keep wearing something and showing up a certain way. No,
mm-hmm.
like have fun, and I love that, the right kind of fun too. So anyways, great F's. I don't have any F's to give. I mean, or to add to that. I mean, yeah.
Uh, I love that. All right, question for both of you guys, right? So for the guys that are listening right now, he's in the place, right? Successful, stuck, busy, unfulfilled. Um, but he's got that voice in his head saying, I don't have time for this, or I should be able to figure this out on their own. Where do you go from here?
Mm.
Greg's up.
Oh, just start. We've
Mm,
all been stuck. We're
mm-hmm,
all going to get stuck again.
mm-hmm,
It's continuous. It's action over outcome. So what I say to those guys who are stuck, what's the one thing you can do today? What's the one thing you can do that is a little bit different from yesterday, that makes you a little bit better from the day before? What is that 1% or incremental thing that you can do? Can you swap a soda for water? Can you kiss your wife good morning instead of rolling out of bed and taking her for granted because you've been married for 20 something years like I
mm,
have? Can you, if you
mm-hmm,
have children, can you call your kids? Not just
mm,
text them or wait until they're, can you have the hard conversation? If you haven't
Hmm.
exercised in 6 months or 6 years, can you go for a 5, 10, 15-minute walk that day? It's the one thing that you can do. Progress is a process. I say that all the time. And we think it's about motivation, or we think it's about, the memes and everything. Motivation on this, it comes from action. If you're stuck and you want to get unstuck, you have to take an action. And that action
Mm-hmm.
can't just be consumption of other people's actions and motivation and things that they
Yes.
tell you. It has to be a personal action that you own and you take agency of. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be big. In fact, it should start small. And those
Hmm.
things compound. So it's as simple as I got a timer on the shelf over there too from an event I did for Chick-fil-A of all companies. It's a 1 minute timer and you flip it over. And the conversation that we were having is imagine what you can do in a minute. Now imagine if you spent a minute 365 days of the year, what can you do? It could be you could stand up for a minute because you're used to sitting at your desk for hours on end without standing up. You could see how many push-ups you could do in a minute. You could call or text 2 or 3 of your friends that you want to reconnect with. So many things you can do. And it's a longer answer for a shorter question. But the thing you
Hmm.
have to do if you are stuck to go from stuck to unstuck is you have to take a small action today.
Hmm.
And then you got to
Hmm.
do it again tomorrow. And when you
Hmm.
break the streak, and every one of us will invariably break the streak, you start a new one. That's
Hmm.
it.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, I just love this because this is so complimentary to what you said. It's like the yin and the yang. What you're saying, what's the one thing you can do? And I would add, what's the one thing you can not do? Meaning, what can this is how what I often it's a form of action, but starting with subtraction instead of addition. So what needs to be removed? Because a lot of the excuses are, I don't, yeah, again, I don't have time for this. But taking an inventory of like your social media habits or binge watching shows or what you're eating and drinking or other things you're consuming or overindulged hobbies or social engagements you're way overcommitted to or lack of work boundaries. Like, so start with, again, an action, and also right alongside, what can you subtract to make space for that? Because it's not true you don't have time. You do have time, and you can carve it out. It's just figuring out how to open that up. So, what's one small thing you can remove or put some new boundaries around because it's taking up too much space and inhibiting you from that next right step?
Hmm. Love that. All right, as we're coming up to the end of the hour right now, we've got an event coming up in Baja, and it's I guess MEA's first men's workshop in partnership with Greg and Midlife Male. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be amazing. It's going to be 3 of us together. And I've enjoyed this conversation. I knew this was going to be fantastic. Greg, what's your vision for this week?
Oh wow. My vision is to be surrounded by great men in a great
Mm,
environment, having a great time. And Rad is in this chat. He was on a trip that we took last year, and he said the thing is the thing. And this is the thing. We get 5 days together in Baja to cultivate an experience to help design our roadmaps, our midlife action plans, what each and
mm,
every one of our definitions of mastering the middle looks like. And we get to be strategic and we get to be tactical about it. And then we get to put it into action each and every day. So if you have not developed certain habits that have stuck for you, if you have
mm,
questions and challenges around what you like, don't like, what you can, what you can't do. This is a great opportunity to answer those questions and to live the vision each day for 5 days. That's
mm,
my vision, is to get into the execution and the implementation of it. And to
mhm,
so much of the ground that we covered here about not taking ourselves too seriously, having a
mm,
lot of fun, nourishing our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our personalities, our individualities, embracing curiosity. Like, these are all the things that are in the bucket for me for
mhm,
anything I do. And I go through it in my F's. Okay, hey, this is a new family and friendship opportunity. Okay?
mhm,
This is healthy for me, mind, body, and spirit. I can afford this budgetarily, time wise, finance, wealth, the definition of wealth. I'm going to pack really great clothes for this also, that I feel comfortable with. We're going to have a lot of fun. And all of these things come back down to like, that's my thesis and my operating system for how I make decisions. So that's my vision for the experience, is that it encompasses all of this. And, and the guys leave MEA better than they found it and more equipped to apply these principles and experience into their own lives. And my real vision is to hear from everybody that's there months later about how it's working out for them and
Mm,
how things are going, because it is a journey. Progress
hmm
is that process. And you build a solid foundation going in, but we take that foundation from what we do at MEA and we apply it to the rest of our lives.
hmm
And then we get excited to come back for the next one.
hmm
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the, we see this across all of our cohorts. And I know it's going to be very true for this one is connection. You're building you're building a group, a group of guys that are going to become, I think, we always start off with, okay, you're in a room of important strangers, and the evolution over that week. This is the one step closer to curing that loneliness that so many guys I think are struggling from, and that excites me. I think this is important work, and I'm proud to be doing it with you guys. And I'm
Can I add
super
something? Because
excited.
I'm super excited about this.
Absolutely, give her,
So
Ben.
what I want to say, I mean, I can't wait to hang out with you both and everyone else who comes, and we get to co-create a space together. But
Mhm,
this is a really cool chance to go all in, right? Because a lot of the stuff we've talked about, I'm imagining, we can dabble in this stuff in our life, then not feel like we're making progress. This
mhm,
provides an opportunity to really go all in and make like a serious shift and investment in who you really are, right? This
mm,
not reinventing yourself, but kind of removing what's gotten in the way from showing up
mhm,
authentically. And the other thing that occurred to me as we're talking about, like this experience, and I find this with all the workshops, but it's a rite of passage, right? I brought that up earlier. You're
mm,
giving yourself a clear like before and after by undergoing this experience together and with some new friends, is to say like you can look back at something like this and say, yeah, that's who I was before, and I came
yeah,
out the other side with some accountability and support and vision for how I want to live. So anyways, I can't wait.
it's gonna be good.
Likewise. Yes.
And one question just came up, and I was going to say we got a couple minutes left here. We can throw some questions. Stephen just asked, will there be content for those of us who are recently retired from full-time work? That was a massive change of my life.
Mm, I would say so. Yes. I mean, to that effect, I feel like, again, what are we looking to do in retirement? And how, again, do we define retirement? We may have retired from our full time jobs, but we have not
Mm,
retired from our full time lives. So, what do we intend to do? Who do we intend to be?
yeah.
That, yeah, I think there's a lot of commonality in the programming and what we'll be talking about that is extremely applicable to, say, post full time work slash retirement. I know I'm thinking a lot about it,
hmm
like even myself, and what the definition of that word even looks like in my life and at what period we get there.
Mm. Yeah, I think that in and of itself is a meaty topic. Is what is retirement now, right? What does that look like for the average guy? Because from my perspective, the retirement I saw 20 years ago, or my grandparents or my parents taking, that doesn't appeal to me.
Mhm.
Um,
I think it gets us into hobbies. It gets us
hmm
into passion. It gets us into
hmm
purpose. It gets us into time management. It gets us into health. It gets us
mm,
into all of the things that we discuss to make a full life.
hmm
And I think your life is certainly no less full. We may
yeah,
have identity. Identity was covered before. Imposter syndrome was
hmm
covered before. How it affects relationships.
hmm
All I mean, there's a lot of meat on this bone. So
Oh,
Stephen, come
huge,
on,
huge,
come on out, Stephen. If
huge.
you're
Yeah, it's
fully
gonna be good.
retired, you got the time too. So
It's
we got to
good.
put it to
Yeah.
good use. What we put on our calendars as well.
All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, gentlemen. Thank you very much. This is a fantastic conversation, and I can't wait for 5 days with you guys in April. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I'm excited to create this with you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Greg. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Ben. Thank you, Derek. Thank you all.